Hello, my name is Jonathan and welcome to Tremendous Soundtracks. Basically we talk about, why soundtracks sound like they do, what's their purpose, and I go into their meaning. So the soundtrack today is from the film Rush, 2013. It's about racing drivers, Hunt and Niki Lauda, back in the day. It's like classic racing where health and safety wasn't really a big deal, and it's all about the racing and the sport and how they push each other to the limits, and it's focused on their rivalry and why they race and why the sport means so much to them. So Rush is basically telling their story, but it's also giving you a glimpse into what racing was like back then. A lot of the fans were sort of almost on the track as they drove past, and the cars maybe they won't be as quick as the ones today, but back then they were maybe more quick and less designed for safety. So it's kind of like these guys were really, it was their skill that enabled them to sort of get around the track, and really brave, courageous. So the soundtrack is Lost But One by Hans Zimmer, and it's the naming of it's quite interesting because their season, Niki Lauda and Hunt, spoiler alert, Lauda obviously had the crash, he was going to win, but then obviously he couldn't, and then Hunt caught him up, and then he came back from his injury, so it's like, it's all about a comeback as well, and how it's never quite perfect. Like even with Hunt, he was desperate to get a ride. He needed to get a car. He needed a drive, and because the team he was with ran out of money, and he needed it was like he might be like close to like not making it, and so it's all about defying the odds and pushing yourself on, and that's what these drivers do every time they race. So the name is, I think, good. So as I said, it's mostly about the competition and how they push each other on. So at no point they can ever stand still. They can't sort of have a victory and then just sort of stop. They've always got to keep pushing on, and it's that competition that made them both push themselves to like a higher level, probably made them better racers, and you can see how when you have competition and push each other on, it's it's like Pepsi and Coke, or Mercedes and BMW, or Apple and Microsoft. These companies, Man United and Man City, they always, that competition makes them do better. So it's the rivalry makes it better racing. So that's why it's a really cool story. We have it a bit today with Hamilton and Verstappen. Both of them pushing each other on, So I think the Formula One drivers, they are like heroes, they are gladiators, they are real life superheroes doing tremendous speed, but their skill, they can actually go around a corner at that speed and come out the other side. So how does the soundtrack represent these two heroes in a gladiatorial battle? How does it sort of represent how they are pushing the limits. They are almost like godlike figures, heroes, champions, risking it all. And it starts with like the calm before the storm when you first listen to the soundtrack. The first minute's quite calm and still, and it's like they're being called to action. And in the film, a lot of times you see them before the race, sort of either vomiting or psyching themselves up, and it's like they're sort of preparing themselves for the arena. And then about 1 minute in, it starts to build the soundtrack, and you've got this sort of cello that I think it's a cello, and it's quite romantic. And I feel that sound is like it's like wrapping them up in golden reefs. It's like glorifying them as trophies, that sort of sound. So that's really interesting how that comes through to sort of give them that sense of they're doing something that's going to be acknowledged. And then 2 minutes in, you have these trumpets, and they sound like two men sort of jostling together on the edge, and they're like pushing each other onwards. So I think when those trumpets come in, that sort of symbolises, the two, Hunter and Lauda, both jostling and competing and pushing each other on. And then about 2 minutes 30 into the soundtrack, you have this sort of back and forth, chaotic competing, as if they are literally racing. It sort of captures the essence of this to and fro, back and forth racing. That's quite, anything can happen. It's real dramatic. And then the tempo sort of continues with that cello still sort of championing their endeavours, and it's quite intense for the first sort of 3 or 4 minutes, representing the racing. And then about 4 minutes 45 in, I actually think it sounds like The Last Samurai movie, which actually has a lot of deep meaning in itself. If you just listen to that from about 4 minutes 45 onwards, you sort of think, if you didn't know, you might think, oh, that could be The Last Samurai. And that's a very deep emotional soundtrack that has a lot to say about culture and stuff. But the fact that it sounds like that in this Rush movie sort of says that there's a lot more to racing, like it really means something to people. The idea of wanting to be like a champion, motorsport is like innovating motoring. And, everyone uses motoring to get about, and it's how they can sort of go to like a new level and push it to the limit. But as men back then, when you didn't have the advancements in technology, it was very much the heroes doing all the work. So they're kind of like samurais with courage. The risks, the whole throughout, that they are taking risks, and risk is a big question asked in it, like, is it worth the risks, when is enough? And you really get a sense for that from the soundtrack, that they are risking their lives, basically. And it sort of asks that question, why do it, sort of thing. I think it sounds like they are, like, it's interesting when a soundtrack can actually sound like a movie, how it can actually give you a sense of a moment. And I think it actually sounds like they're gliding through a corner at tremendous speed. You get a sense that it's going as fast, they're going as fast as possible, but really smoothly with no resistance, which sort of suggests their skill. To actually get a sense for that from the soundtrack, to feel like it sounds like using their skill, they're gliding through a corner. It's quite impressive. I think they are like pilots, pushing to the sound barrier on the limit. They are like gladiators. And you really get a sense from that, from the soundtrack. And ask that question again. Why do it? Is it because they love the sport? And then about 5 minutes into the soundtrack, I feel you get the sense of there's angel spirits. This sounds a bit like there's some sort of mythical thing going on where perhaps they might be going to the dark side. Maybe they are going to die, sort of thing. Quite interesting, and it's quite sort of sorrowful, almost like a tragedy. They are on the edge, and at any moment it could be the last corner they ever do. But I think it's that they can't live without it. They have to. For them, it's all or nothing. It's just their personality types, and they're going to give everything for the win. And you've got to give everything to be able to do it. So it's high risk, quite intense, and it really does represent the motorsport. And how it represents sort of human endeavour, really, and how sometimes in life you have to risk it all if you believe in something enough. And I think the soundtrack really gives you a sense for all those elements. It really gives you a sense for them competing, gives you a sense of the motorsport. It gives you a sense for the courage, and it really represents the movie well. So yeah, that's Rush. I recommend you download it and listen to it. If you'd like any more videos like this, just let me know. And yeah, thank you for listening. Like and subscribe.